Imagine if, a low-level general who was involved in this operation had texted the exact time and location of a military strike to an anti-Trump journalist. Now, and imagine if that general is one of these woke generals that they're going after. Maybe it's a black general or a woman. Imagine what Pete Hegseth would be saying today. Imagine what Dave Rubin would be saying today. We know what these guys would be saying. These woke generals, they're the deep state. We need a court martial. We need an investigation. This person needs to be fired. I think we can all agree that that is what would be happening today. That person, if they were a two-star black general or female general and they had done this, they would be fired today. I think that's very obvious.
In today's video, Tim Miller absolutely destroys Dave Rubin in a heated debate on the recent Signal group chat leak where Trump's own national security advisor Mike Waltz accidentally added the Atlantic's editor-in-chief to a Signal group where they were openly discussing sensitive US military plans like actual targets and weapons for strikes in Yemen. We're talking potential classified info casually floating around like it's a fantasy football chat. So let's dive in and watch how Tim Miller shuts down Dave Rubin in this heated debate.
And so, look, Pete Hegseth might be a mate of yours, might be a good person. I don't know. I've never met Pete Hegseth. But to me, you read this signal chain, and this looks like it got its way in over his head. And this is not, if General Mattis here, it's impossible to imagine General Mattis texting emojis and all caps pathetic to like a Signal group chain, preparing them for when the strikes would be. It's just, it signals to me somebody that's not serious, it's not up for the job. The fact that then on the chain, he says, we have 100% operational security here, and there's someone on the chain he doesn't know. Like you didn't check to make sure you knew everybody on the chain. I think it shows just an unbelievable lack of seriousness. And I think clearly if this was one of the woke generals that Pete Hegseth doesn't like, they would be fired today and there would be a DOJ investigation targeting them.
All right, Dave Rubin, a lot to unpack there, but I mean, a lot I agree with, I have to say. Look, let's talk about the Signal aspect. If they, as you say, and I've seen that report, if they were encouraged to use Signal, and in fact it had been put on a lot apparently of their phones and so on when they came into their positions, so they're allowed to use Signal, which is deemed to be one of the more secure ways of communicating. And you believe, as Pete Hegseth clearly did, that you've only got on there the Secretary of State, the Defense Secretary, the National Security Advisor, and so on. In other words, all the senior members of the cabinet that would be involved, plus one or two hand-picked staffers who are at a very high level. If you assume that's who you're talking to privately, then I'm not too fazed about emojis and stuff like that. You've got to have some presumption, I think, when you're conversing with people at that level, that you presume to be that level, that it will remain private. So I'm not sure I can get too exercised about that part of it. The thing that still exercises me, though, is just that if it hadn't been Jeffrey Goldberg, but had been somebody who wanted to really damage the administration, they really could have done, and you could have seen American planes blown out the sky.
Tim Miller hit the nail on the head here, and honestly, props to Piers Morgan for finally acknowledging the double standard. The Signal group chat leak wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. We're talking about top-level officials accidentally leaking sensitive military planning to a journalist because someone forgot to double-check who was in the group chat. That's amateur hour at the highest levels of national security. And Tim's point about the woke generals is so spot on. If this had been a black general or a woman, especially one the MAGA crowd doesn't like, Fox News would have been in full meltdown mode. They'd be screaming about treason, holding 24/7 panels, and demanding immediate firings. Even Piers had to admit that if someone maliciously had been in that chat, not just Jeffrey Goldberg, US assets could have been attacked. That's the level of risk we're dealing with here.
Sure. Look, there's a couple of things going on here. First off, I think your guest in the center, I'm sorry, I don't remember the congressman's name. I think he said it was illegal to use Signal in these chats. Now, again, Ratcliffe, who is the CIA director, is saying, as you just said again, that it was preloaded on their computers and devices. So I don't think that's illegal, but if there's some legal portion of this.
Well, just for the record, it's
you are not allowed to share
Jake
classified material over Signal.
Well, just to introduce you again, Jake, for Dave, it's Jake Auchincloss, who's a Democrat congressman from Massachusetts. So, Jake, you want to respond to him?
Okay, so well, there's some issue as it pertains to whether
you
Signal
cannot
should
share
or shouldn't have
classified
been
material
used.
over Signal.
Okay, so that's interesting. So, all right, so Congressman, just to be clear, it is illegal to share classified information over Signal. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the military has its own entire network. They have SCIFs inside the homes of every senior military commander. They have SCIFs co-located with the Secretary of Defense precisely so that they are not putting highly classified operational plans on commercial messaging apps. It's illegal, full stop. And Pete Hegseth needs to own that accountability, because if this happened to a corporal or a captain or a general, their career would be over. He shouldn't have this job in the first place, and my goodness, he certainly shouldn't have it now.
Dave, I mean, if it turns out that that is correct, and I don't dispute what the congressman just said, then should Pete Hegseth consider his position? It's a legitimate question which Republicans would be asking of a Democrat.
I don't know. I can only hear the information that you're hearing on the fly the same exact way. If it turns out that they were told you are not allowed to put classified information in a Signal chat, and they went ahead and did it, even though it was preloaded on their computer, and Ratcliffe testified that he was briefed by people at the CIA about using that stuff, well, then there's a secondary problem. And also, it should be reiterated, I don't think anyone here is defending the fact that Mike Waltz apparently let this guy into the chat. So there is some intellectual consistency here. And it's up to Trump. Trump has to decide what he wants to do right now. Does he think this is a big enough scandal and it's worth firing a guy that he just brought into NSA or not?
It's not up to Trump. See, this is the problem with the way Republicans. This is the problem with the way Republicans are acting these days, is they act like a board of advisors.
Democrats just had 4 years of a president with dementia and a completely unqualified cabinet and virtually everyone that had anything to do with it. So tell me more about the Republicans.
The Republicans act like a board of advisors to a CEO as opposed to a separate and co-equal branch of government. They have abdicated their responsibility. Mike Johnson acts like a courtier. John Thune acts like a courtier. They're the ones who confirmed this junior varsity squad of people who are getting out-competed by the Kremlin and out-negotiated, who are being laughed at by the Chinese Communist Party right now as they prepare to blockade Taiwan. This is threatening the safety of the American people. These people are not fit for the office that they hold, and all Republicans in Congress can do is shrug their shoulders. It's pathetic.
Did Joe Biden have dementia, and we had 4 years of him? Do you think Joe Biden was mentally competent to be president for 4 years? Do you think Joe Biden knew things that he was signing for 4 years?
It's amazing the whataboutisms.
This debate between Dave Rubin and Representative Jake Auchincloss on the Signal group chat leak really shows the difference between hand-waving partisan excuses and actual accountability. Dave, as usual, tries to muddy the waters, acting like it's all just a misunderstanding or maybe something preloaded by the CIA. But Jake isn't playing those games. He cuts right through the noise with facts. The reality is, it is illegal to share classified information over Signal. Period. The military has secure systems and SCIFs for this exact reason. There's no world where a top-level official leaking the time and location of a military strike over a commercial messaging app like Signal is remotely acceptable. Whether it was Pete Hegseth or anyone else in that chat, it's a breach of basic operational security.
Why don't you bring up Hillary Clinton too? Do we want to talk about Barack Obama's tan suit as well? You would do anything to not have to talk about the fact that the Secretary of Defense just shared classified war plans.
To be fair, both sides.
Was Joe Biden mentally capable of being president?
Let's
all
accept Joe Biden was mentally unfit for office. Let's accept that. as we've been talking,
one of us isn't
there is a
accepting that, but
report
okay.
now that Pete Hegseth and other Trump administration officials are being sued by a government watchdog group for using Signal to discuss the military plans to strike Houthi targets in Yemen. American oversight alleges in its lawsuit the chat on the unclassified commercial app that mistakenly included the Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, violated federal records law. So that does appear to be something that is now an active lawsuit. Tim Miller, just to bring you back in on this, what do you think should happen? I mean, in terms of accountability, at the moment, there's a sort of Trumpian playbook of them all doubling down, launching a lot of whataboutery attacks back, but nobody wanting to actually say, it's a fair cop, Gov, and I better stand on my sword.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there should be an actual investigation into this. I don't really have any hope that the Pam Bondi or DOJ or Kash Patel FBI will take this seriously, but I think there should be. And I also think that, sure, Mike Waltz should be accountable for this. And Mike Waltz was on Fox last night. This is crazy, Piers. Mike Waltz was on Fox last night suggesting to Laura Ingraham that Jeffrey Goldberg might have gotten on this Signal chat deliberately. That's what he said. He said it might have been deliberate. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. That's our national security advisor. Like, that's a very serious accusation. He's saying that a magazine editor might have committed illegal espionage. And so, but he just doesn't want to actually take the accountability.
Then he changed, yeah. But then,
because to find out whether or not that was true, you'd need to have a real investigation by DOJ or by a special counsel, and they don't want that because he knows it's him. So he just wants to throw out those lies willy-nilly. And it's kind of an absurd lie, really, actually, if some boomer magazine editor was able to sneak onto the chat illegally. That I think speaks even more to how incompetent the administration would be, other than the true story.
Yeah, I found it slightly more disconcerting that his second explanation, because he had quite a few on the Laura Ingraham interview, was that somehow Jeffrey Goldberg's number had been under somebody else's name in his contacts list. And just to remind the viewers watching this guy is the National Security Advisor for the United States of America. The idea that he doesn't know whether everyone's name in his contacts list is attached to the right number and can therefore be communicating with God knows who without any actual knowledge that they are who he thinks they are is frankly terrifying.
This whole Signal group chat scandal is such a wild example of how unserious and honestly dangerous things have gotten under Trump's leadership. Tim brings up a key point. Instead of owning up to it, these guys are running the full MAGA playbook: deny, deflect, distract. Mike Waltz even floated this bizarre theory on Fox News that Jeffrey Goldberg, a magazine editor, somehow got into the group chat on purpose, like espionage level stuff. That's a serious accusation, but it's thrown out there with zero evidence, just to confuse the issue. Even scarier, Waltz also claimed Goldberg's name was saved under someone else's contact info. And this guy is involved in national security? If he can't even verify who's in a private Signal thread about airstrikes in Yemen, how are we supposed to trust him with anything else? So yeah, Tim's right. We need a real investigation, even if the current DOJ under Trump probably won't touch it. But this goes beyond partisanship. National security isn't a game. And pretending it is just because your guy's in charge, that's how mistakes become disasters. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.